Now, come on. You knew I was going to talk about this. Hey there. Yep, you guessed it. I was just not going to avoid talking about comic books. I have an unboxing video. It's an order from Atomic Avenue. I can't get enough of it. It is from a seller that I hadn't ordered from before. And I continue to do this with my comic book orders where I'm trying to find different sellers, different sources to add into the mix, add it to my ledger, and grade the books, rate the sellers, and figure out where are truly the best places to buy comic books online. And maybe, while you wouldn't say are the best places, at least they're places that I trust, or places where I have a certain expectation and I know that that expectation can be met. And in some cases, I'm expecting maybe near mint minus or near mint or eights or sixes, who knows. Heritage Auctions is a great example of a source where I really try and find 6.0s. So it really depends on the condition, the price, your budget, and where you trust to get good books, and where you want to find reliable sellers. And I much prefer the really the low key, chill, easy transaction sort of experience instead of the super hyper in your face, you must buy this book, why are you sleeping on this sort of approach. I can buy on my own terms, and frankly, I pay extra. I would gladly pay more to have just a regular buying experience. And I think that that's where a lot of comic book sellers online, they really miss the boat on this. They really don't understand this concept. When you're selling to people, buyers can see through you when you're not being transparent, and when you're being I call it like a hype artist. We can all kind of see through that. And what I want as a buyer is I want a seller to be there that's going to have great customer service, again, reliability, and make it feel, even though I'm exchanging my currency for theirs, which in this case it's my money for their comics, I want to feel like both sides are really kind of getting the best deal. I always feel really strange if I'm overpaying for a book, or I've paid for a book and I expect it in a certain condition and it comes back and it's a lot less, or the other way around. There are times where I've walked out of a convention thinking I just stole something. Like, did I really get that good of a deal? And even though as a comic book collector, you are in it for the deals sometimes as a buyer, it doesn't make me feel honest and great about the transaction. I really just want to feel like, okay, maybe 10% off fair market value, 20% off, something like that, whatever the seller's happy with. I want both sides to feel good about the transaction. And that really adds a sense of pride to my personal collection. When I'm buying from very specific sellers, they may have the mentality of, I'm just trying to get rid of these books, right? I tend to overanalyze and try and put myself in the place of the seller and think about it. But I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm selling my books, I want them to go to a good home, right? If I'm trying to picture myself as the seller. So it kind of sounds corny, but I almost take it as a responsibility in a way. If I'm buying comic books from somebody, that I am one of those places, that it's a good home, that I'm actually going to really care for the books and curate them and grade them and preserve them. And while I too may sell some books later on, I want the seller to feel good about the transaction, and not just that the seller is making money off of me. I want it to be a fair and relatively even exchange. I want them to understand that I'm a collector at heart and the books are going to be cared for. I'm not just like maybe taking care of a pet or a family member. I understand these are comic books, but there's an aspect of that in comic book collecting that I think is missed. And I certainly believe in this day and age that concept is gone. It's disappearing if it's not gone for good. And I really wish that there was more of that mentality in the hobby right now, where both sides really feel like we're making an honest transaction. I'm sending you as high a quality of comic books as I have in exchange for your money, and it's a complete business transaction. But the way that I look at it is I hope that it is the start of a comic book collecting relationship. And I'm not trying to buy somebody's friendship by buying their comics, but I hope that I would want to do business again with this seller, and I would want the seller to do business with me. Everyone kind of thinks like, well, everything is kind of up to the seller, right, in terms of the transaction and whether or not they ship the books correctly. And believe me, I'm the first one that says like, hey, get better at shipping, stop using tape, and so on. But if you're a seller and a regular seller, you want to find good buyers. You want to find buyers that you trust, that you feel good about conducting a transaction with. But I think right now what sellers are looking at are these are the people that I know I can just get their money. I know I can get money from these people. I know that they like me as a seller for whatever reason. And I think those are the situations I like to avoid completely. So let me get to the unboxing and show you, hopefully, this great stack of comics. I'm a little bit worried about the shape of the box. It's not square like it was from Midtown, but it's not quite as big as I would expect to ship comics, so my fingers are crossed that they arrived in good shape. But there's only one way to find out, and that's to open this box of comics. All right, here is the order from a seller named Kid Callahan on Atomic Avenue. And this is kind of what I was saying about the box. It's a priority mail box. It says medium flat rate, but it is not one of the longer medium flat rates. One of those that, like definitely a slab can't fit in here. It's too short. So what I'm concerned about is like the comic book. You can see here from the bag and board, like it's just barely larger than a comic book. So let's open it up and see what's inside. Well, hopefully these aren't my comic books all shredded. So this is a new one. We have little tiny shredded pieces of paper. Oh, I think there are comics in here somewhere. I'm gonna try and make sure these don't get everywhere. All right. Oh yes, protected by the old newspaper. Look at that, huh? I mean, that's protection right there. Newspaper. I think there's a couple of stacks. I'm gonna be picking up these scraps of paper for days. I know that. Another one, newspaper. So a little reading, a little extra reading material. I think that's it. Okay, so what a mess. So we've got the tape monster, Peanuts. Got a new character added to the unboxing. I'm just gonna have to leave these paper scraps everywhere. What a mess. But let's see if the newspaper did in fact protect these books. All right, let's check out the comics and see what I got. Move those to the side. I'm gonna have to deal with this mess later. And let's see what we got. First book is Amazing Spider-Man 364. This is a great issue with Shocker. Mark Bagley cover. I really love the perspective on this one. And I believe I picked up multiple copies of this, but this may be on repeat here. But that's the first book. Savage She-Hulk, number 13. This is the same thing for me like Moon Knight. As we were getting closer and closer to the show, I just kept snagging Moon Knight's first solo series, just random single issues. Same thing with She-Hulk. We've got Man-Wolf stuck back there. There she is. So She-Hulk story right around the corner. And I just keep picking up random issues that I didn't have to try and complete a run. I don't have issue number 1, her first appearance, but I have issue 2 and several issues after that. Here is Spider-Man 14. Great McFarlane Black Suit Spidey cover. And I believe it is Morbin time back there. But there's a great handful of these Spider-Mans with McFarlane drawing the Black Suit Spidey, which is awesome. Spider-Man number 4, I continue just to grab these, and I just cross my fingers that they're 9/8. Anything below, these are very, very common, $3 to $5 a piece. But if you can get them in a 9.8, you're starting to talk about $75 to $125. So the strategy here is find books like these that are well-known, great art, find them in a 9.8, and they're so easy to find raw and so plentiful that folks just have these in their back issue bins, and they're just like, oh, I've got 10 copies of these. Let's just list them all for a few bucks. Here's another one, Spider-Man #6, great Hobgoblin cover. Ghost Rider 37. Now, this is another series that I'm looking at from the 90s. We know Ghost Rider's coming to the MCU. Johnny Blaze, Robbie Reyes, in some way, shape, or form, maybe both. And going back and sort of kind of what I was doing with Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Ghost Rider, I don't have a lot of these books from this 90s series, so just picking up these single issues. Great Ghost Rider cover here. Punisher War Journal #50. This was also a value pick. Love grabbing these books for a couple of bucks, less than cover price, which is amazing. This is an embossed cover. It's super cool, and you gotta, with any of these like foil covers, embossed covers, and things like that, gotta worry about scratches and everything. But this looks to be in really good condition. Corners look sharp. Really tough to get this book in a high grade due to the all black background here in the header, but this one looks really good. Daredevil 234. This has Madcap on the cover. I don't know if that was supposed to be like a Joker-like character. I mean, probably. But I got a few Daredevil books in this order, and this is one of them. Teen Titans #26. Great George Perez cover art. Really respect the Marv Wolfman Perez run here. Not a DC New Teen Titans type of collector, but I'm certainly aware of Perez's body of work and decided to take a chance on this book, and it looks great. Looks really nice. Fantastic Four 241. This one just happens to be a newsstand. It's one of the things about Atomic Avenue is they don't really list newsstands as variants. They will break out other variants, but there's no specific bucket for, like, there's not the direct edition and then newsstand. It's just FF 241, and then you kind of have to go through under that item page and find sellers and conditions, and they may put in the description direct or newsstand. Most do not. So sometimes you get what you get. A newsstand for this particular book is more common than the direct anyway, but just continuing to grab all the John Byrne Fantastic Four books I can. Wonder Man #1. This is interesting. I got this at a great price too. I believe that Wonder Man has been casted according to rumors, and the other rumor I heard is that the show that they're going to make around Wonder Man is going to be based on sort of this theory of the lights, camera, action, that he's a struggling actor, but also superhero. We'll have to see how that goes. It sounds a little bit kind of like She-Hulk in a way. Obviously Wonder Man's not an attorney, but we'll have to see how this plays out. But if this is true, then, you know, this book, I think, is going to probably be more sought after, just because they're basing at least the concept of the show, and it's lights, camera, action right there on the top. So wanted to grab that. Here's another Amazing Spider-Man 364. I think this is the third copy, so that I did get 3 of this one. They all look to be in really, really nice shape, so happy about that so far. And then Classic X-Men #1. I love this book. I love Art Adams. This should have been a poster in my room growing up. Just absolutely amazing. And you get the newsstand copy. As we progress through the 80s and certainly into the early 90s, the newsstand variants are harder to find. The other copy I have is direct, so now I have one direct, one newsstand. I did not purposefully buy this book to get the newsstand. It just happened to be there. But these were the books that I read to catch up on those older X-Men titles. And you just can't beat the initial run of classic X-Men with Art Adams covers. And then later on, it flipped to X-Men Classic, and there's also some great Adam Hughes covers in that. Okay, X-Men 6. Not much to say here. Jim Lee, Wolverine, Sabretooth, Psylocke, 90s. Just all kinds of goodness here. Again, very easy to find, plentiful book, but recognizable, and in a 9.8 has really great value. Spider-Man 20. You're either an Eric Larson fan or you're not. This interesting because McFarlane went from ASM and then Larson followed him. McFarlane went to Spider-Man. Larson followed him there as well. Warlock in the Infinity Watch #2, another newsstand. Now this one from 1992, the fact that it's a newsstand copy, this one could have a little bit of value here. But with Warlock coming in Guardians 3, I don't have a lot of Warlock books and wanted to start picking those up, so I'm keeping an eye on these sort of mini-series types that are more associated with like Jim Starlin, Cosmic, things like that, and just grabbing these one at a time when I can find them. She-Hulk #9, very recognizable, stunning, striking cover here by Mike Mayhew. And it's fun to go back and get some of these books done by artists that are probably more known currently for a lot of their store exclusives. With She-Hulk being released soon on Disney Plus, it'll be interesting to see what sort of storylines they pull from the comics. I believe that it's probably going to be some sort of mashup between the Byrne Sensational She-Hulk and the Slott She-Hulk run here. More Daredevil books. Daredevil 241, really, really nice Mike Zeck cover with Daredevil looking over the city. Daredevil 240. These books were right around the time I was collecting Daredevil. It was a little bit of post Frank Miller, but this was right around the time I was picking up Daredevil off the newsstands. Right, this Marvel 25th anniversary was right when I was in my youth and my collecting prime, and this is right when I started to get into Daredevil, buying him off the newsstand, and then going back and grabbing some back issues. Star Wars Crimson Empire #2. As a Star Wars fan, anytime I can get Dark Horse Star Wars in high grade, I go for it. So really, regardless of whether or not it's a key, if I see him in near mint or above, and it's for a few bucks, I gotta grab him. And the last book here, Uncanny X-Men 273. Kind of like what I said with X-Men 6. You've got Jim Lee, fantastic art. Wolverine, Psylocke, Jubilee. Just a great time to be an X-Men fan. Great time to be a Jim Lee fan. I love grabbing these books before the Image artists like McFarlane, Larson, Lee, and they all made that jump to Image. I love grabbing their big publisher type books before they make the jump. So those are the comics that I ordered from Atomic Avenue. They look to be, again, I take them out of the bag and board and grade them later, but they look to be, at first glance, in really, really nice shape, really nice condition, so I'm happy about that. So now let's take a look at what I paid for the books and compare the cost to fair market values. All right, so here's that order from Atomic Avenue from the seller Kid Callahan. I placed this order at the end of June 2022, and it cost me $69.60, and it was a 22-book order. I have the fair market value provided by Cover Price plugged in here. And if I compare the total cost, there was no shipping and no tax on this order. So if I compare the total cost here, the sum equaling the summary at $69.60, so I know my math is correct. But there was no additional cost to acquire the book other than the prices themselves. And as you can see, we've got $1.50, $1.75, $2, $1.75, $2.50. I mean, it was just one of those kind of orders, just finding basically $2 books, I guess, on average. So if we compare the total cost against fair market value, let me just get to the top here. Here are those three ASM 364s. We can see that in terms of raw value in column AA, almost all of the books had a positive value. So 364 total cost was $2.50, just as an example, and the Cover Price fair market value is $8. Now, I will say that these values were plugged in kind of in the middle of the Cover Price update, which if you haven't seen, they're a couple of things. Now, their fair market value is rounded up or rounded down. We don't really quite know where the rounding occurs, but it's whole dollars now. So there's no, they're not trying to nickel and dime these fair market values anymore. So 364 is now an $8 book, but you'll notice I still have maybe values from, just before the update kind of plugged in here. The other thing that they did is they added fair market value for raw books at different grades. I don't want to get into that right now. I don't quite understand how they're doing that. So what I ended up doing is they now show the most average grade, and then the value of that most common grade, I guess I should say, is now the fair market value. And you can check this because if you're looking at like today's hot list on Cover Price and you see the value, it'll say $8, then you click into the book and it'll put the the most typical raw grade in bold, and that will kind of match. So I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but essentially they've just changed where that fair market value number is on their screen, so you just kind of have to look for it a little bit more. But I like the update. I'm just not quite sure if I'm really on board with the whole individual grade of a raw book, because I think that's very, very subjective, and you're trusting sellers to be honest about their grades, which I think I've proven on this channel they're not. Let's get back to these books in particular. So in total here, for the raw value, just for raw books, I've added $77.08 of value to my collection. So this is pretty nice. I essentially kind of got them for half off fair market value. So I was really, really excited about this particular order and opening it because I wanted to see these values. And looks like one of the biggest winners here is that Uncanny X-Men 273. I paid $3.25 and currently has a value of $13.18 for a value add of $9.93. The new Teen Titans 26 was a bit of a loser. I paid $10 for it. Again, kind of just like wanted to keep adding great George Perez books to my collection, so I overpaid for that one a little bit. Lost $3.51 of value there. But overall, everything looks really, really nice in terms of raw book fair market value. Classic X-Men, roughly a $10 book from a fair market value perspective. I paid $6.25. I'd pay $6.25 all day for that book in a 9.4 or up. I love it. All right, so let's look at the grades of these books. So they're listed in near mint, so you kind of have to assume 9.4. And if I were to give all of these books a 9.4, you see the column V, the CGC value update, and a lot of them have value in 9.4, and this is exactly what I do. I try to find books like this because I consider these and classify them as low-risk purchases. Now, you do get some of the books below 9.4, I get that, but I'm trying to be a little bit of a naive buyer, and if somebody says I've got a near mint book, I just assume it's 9.4, right? Because if it says near mint, then it's 9.4. That's what I learned a long time ago. And what I like to do is I like to build in a little bit of a safety net into these purchases. So the fact that we've got some really consistent CGC values here, which is fantastic, like Star Wars Crimson Empire #2 and a 9.4, it's a $50 book. So this is where I talk about it's low risk, meaning it only cost me $4.25. So if I were to send it into CGC after all the grading fees, if I thought I was going to get a 9.8 and it came back a 9.4, it still has some value. In fact, it has an additional $13.07 worth of value. Now, overall in a 9.4, it's about a break-even order. You'll see Daredevil 240 would be a loss. Ghost Rider 37 would be a loss. It's not all positive. Daredevil 234 has good value, over $50 for classic X-Men #1. And then ASM 364, a little rough at $24 in a 9.4. But overall, it's kind of a get your money back situation. So the sort of working theory I have with this is, okay, I could buy all the books sight unseen, and if I had data on this seller and the average book came back at a 9.4, I should be able to send all of these books without even looking at them to CGC, and in a worst case, I get my money back, right? Because the data is telling me that this particular seller averages out at 9.4. Now, this is a brand new seller. I have to grade these books. You know, even though it's 22 books, it's probably a smaller sample size. I probably need to get, into the hundreds of books ordered from this particular seller to really understand what I'm dealing with. But there are resources like Mile High Comics where you kind of know, okay, if I buy these books from this era, they're probably going to be 9.0 or 9.2. And if they have value graded, you could just buy them and send them off, rinse and repeat. Now, what I like to do for fun is say, okay, well, maybe some of these books actually got into this order and they're 9.8. So let's really take a look and see what the ceiling is here. So if I flip all these to 9.8, and this is just wildly fun and also very inaccurate because I doubt all of these are 9.8, but still, the total CGC value, $1,677.33. So that's the ceiling, the potential, the kind of higher end of the range that I talk about. But it also tells me like these books have value in a 9.8, so it's worth acquiring in high grade to see if there's a pressable defect. And when I see these numbers sort of pop, right? So again, Crimson Empire #2 for $150, right? It's worth the $4.25 to get the book in near mint condition in hopes that it's a 9.8 because it has such a wide gap between the purchase price, the cost, and the fair market value, and the book in a 9.8. And this is not true for all books, right? So Daredevil 240 in a 9.8 is only $53. So in that case, that may not have been a smart purchase, but it was only $2.50. So let's start from the top here. ASM 364, it's $104 in a 9.8. Again, worth the $2.50 gamble on that one. Classic X-Men #1. This is the big winner. I want to take that book out and grade it and really look at it. $415 right now in a 9.8. This was one of those like home run picks that was just like jumping out at me. Like for $6, you can buy this book, cross your fingers. Maybe it comes back. Maybe it can be pressed. 9.8 over $400. And if it were a 9.8, it's a $376 value add. So that is absolutely carrying the order. But there are others that have over $100 of value add in a 9.8. Fantastic Four 241, CGC 9.8 at 139. New Teen Titans, even though from the raw value perspective it was a loss, has a $132 value in a 9.8. Savage She-Hulk #13, just a random filler issue, if you will, 149 in a 9.8. And that Wonder Man #1, I think that one's gonna still kind of increase as we get closer. I think the casting news, who knows, we could be a year or two away from even a trailer, but that's just a fun one to have, especially if they end up making the show, based off of that series, and the fact it says lights, camera, action on the top. Like, that's just going to be a book that, you would think about when you think about the show. You're going to think back to that comic. And that book was one of the cheapest. It may be, I'm looking at the order again. It was tied for the least expensive book in the order at $1.50. I spent $1.50 on that one and that Punisher War Journal #50. So these are the kind of books that I post on social media every day. I'm posting them to Instagram, Twitter. I will do an occasional sort of retrospective or recap here on the channel just so you can kind of see. But I'm kind of waiting to give the books a bit more breathing room, a bit more space to kind of come back because, like I was waiting like a week or two after I posted. And I don't know, I think I just need to see, several months pass and then do more of a look back then. But I'm going to continue to post these. I post the books every day to my Patreon, and then I release that particular book the next day on social media for free. So if you follow me on Instagram at Moneyball Comics or on Twitter, you'll see the posts. And I do it really just to bring awareness of these wide gaps or even discrepancies in the market. They're not anomalies. I mean, there's tons of books like this, and but it's not a buy low, sell high sort of approach, which I think that's just kind of what everybody defaults to. It's a buy low fair market value where in a high grade, it has a high value, which you could sell. Certainly, it's kind of up to you. But one of the things I love about comics is, along with the stories and the art, there are numbers. Every issue is numbered. The condition has a point scale. The values are numbers. And you can put all the numbers together in a formula and really kind of figure out there's these gaps in the market. I mean, to find a book for $1.50 online in high grade that could grade out in a 9.8 and be worth $137, I love finding that stuff. And I think that bringing awareness to these books in the market, I think it benefits everybody. I mean, for buyers, these are great books to hunt. As sellers, you want to be more informed. So, you may not want to let Wonder Man #1 go for $1.50 and kind of take a percentage. When I'm thinking of selling books, if it's a $400 9.8 and I've got it raw, I'm not letting it go for $10. I'm not letting it go for 20. So I want to also educate sellers too. And then lastly, kind of educate the market as a whole. I mean, do I really believe that Classic X-Men #1 is worth $400? I mean, the numbers say that it's worth it, but is it worth it to me? Would I go out and spend $400 to get that book in a 9.8? Absolutely not. So that's where I feel like some of what I share, also I want also people to understand that some of these books feel really, really inflated. But if the market is dictating that that's a $400 book, again, I want to bring awareness to sellers and buyers and to the comic book community and to the market. And I do it because we're all in this together. We love comics, we love comic book collecting. We've been doing this since we were kids. Some of us have kids and they're loving the superhero movie genre. They're starting to appreciate comics. I want to share this information. I want to be transparent around it. And I really hope that what I'm doing brings some awareness to buyers, sellers, collectors, and everyone that loves comics. Thank you for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.